mad to think, right, we did the show today in October 2023, we did the show for our first schools audience in a school, 140 kids in Maherfeld. And you and I had a first conversation about green and blue back in 2014. And we entered into a contract which stated that we had to do a series of readings of a brand new play based on stories for a committee who we didn't necessarily know of retired guards and retired RUC over a period, and then get it to its premiere in October 2016 for the Belfast Festival. Why did we agree to that?
Well, we both like a challenge. And the start of the International Film, or the International Arts Festival again. Yeah, and amazing that and that it's still going and even playing to bigger audiences and wider audiences. But yeah, I suppose what intrigued me at the time was with the type of work I was doing and with Good Boys, but with diversity challenges, who had gathered the stories from the former RUC and guards, was actually to hear what they were saying initially about, well, their experiences, because they knew it was probably going to be their human experiences rather than, you know, writing the politics of the whole thing, fence and all the rest of it. So yeah, so I suppose which originally interested me, but then yeah, I suppose once we kicked into knowing there's a committee, that's when the reservations kicked in a bit, like, and particularly in terms of artistic freedom, you know, that somebody's not going to come in and say, no, you can't say that. Or
Yeah, that whole negotiation thing, like I think I'd kind of learnt some of that on a previous project, but it was funny because also, so like I know you and I talked a lot at the beginning about empathy, and so where we both sat as artists in that relationship with the people whose stories we were telling, and I think you were less apprehensive about that than I was at early stage. I kind of thought I was concerned it was going to be very misogynistic also, and I was also very concerned about the politics of a lot of people in the room. I was going to find it difficult to connect with, and how I would feel, I don't know, about stuff from your own past opening and all that stuff, you know, and then also because you and I hadn't necessarily talked about politics. We talked about human politics, but we'd never been in that scenario where the two of us needed to be honest about stuff that had happened in our individual pasts.
No, I suppose for me, the thing that maybe made me less sort of concerned on that level was that I knew most of the former RUC ones. I'd already engaged with them and outside of the play or I'd met them at various events, so I knew there were people who were already engaging in some way with the past and certainly engaging with Republicans. And the irony was that during one of the sessions when we were showing them the draft, that whenever the guards were getting a bit uneasy about what was being said, and I can understand their point, they had never really taken part in anything before that where they spoke openly.
I think that was the big shock for me. I think that was the reading we did, I think that was in May of 2016. We did it in the kibosh office, so it was very claustrophobic. And we didn't even have sandwiches like we had in Cookstown. It was very basic. And I can't believe I snorted. But I remember thinking, they really are worried. And that was actually probably the most heated round table we ever did. And then there were several of them we didn't see until we opened the show. And
no, and I can imagine what they were going through at that end. I remember that in that meeting in the Boy's office, where they ended up at one point. And the issue they had about was something that was really said in their oral archives, so it was true. Like that guy wasn't making this up. But once they heard it or seen it on a text, and this is going to be in a play, they felt, you know, embarrassed and they were going to make us look like, you know, Keystone Cops or something.
Yeah, the whole Gone Bean thing kept coming up.
And it was actually one of the RUC men, Roger, who turned around and said, "Look, hey, just leave it at Laurence, it'll be fine." And I always thought that I really have that there, said that to me, like just leave it at Laurence, it'll be.
But it is crazy, like, you know, because even at that time when we opened, like, there's no way. In the month of Sundays, we could have thought we'd still be doing it, like, you know, this length of time later.
Well, at a time when, before Brexit, and wasn't even a mention of the border, so they were actually, you know, looking at the past, whereas, ironically, since then, with Brexit and now like a sea border, the issue of borders has come really to the fore. But
did you know in your heart of hearts that it was good?
yeah, I mean, when I was writing with Vincent and Jimmy in mind doing it, not knowing whether or not they would get the parts or not.
I remember you said that to me.
Yeah, because it helps. Yeah, it helps me in the writing to think of characters, and maybe sometimes thinking of people who aren't actors, but just, you know, they're sort of like what I want as a character. And I thought I did. Yeah, I thought I did come together well. And when I seen them doing it, they have like a natural rapport with one another. That and I think there's a good balance of both the tragic and the humour.
It's always a good thing, I think, when you can't write the ending. You know, I think actually in most of the productions that I've worked on, where it's based on oral archives or based on kind of narratives and stuff, and we all feel very close to it, we just can't get the ending right. And when you think about the amount of stuff we went through with that flipping ending, and we knew that we needed to bring it up to modern day, well, modern day and the time, I know, but it just... But you know, when you think about, I mean, obviously you and I have done so many post shows over the years, and if you had to think of an odd one that kind of stuck out in your mind, is there any that you go, or any moments that happened after it where something happened and you went, that it's incredible that it still speaks to people like that?
I think there's a number of times, like the time when we were in South Africa and people, am I totally wrong now? South Africa, it was you passing the street.
I knew you were going to go do that.
Yeah, getting confused with two.
That's what you get for having too many plays.
Just cut all out and do it all again. I think what really surprised me was the day we did performance for the group we were visiting from Eastern European countries, former Soviet bloc countries, hosted under the British Council. And I thought,
in the black box.
yeah, and I thought, like, how are they even going to understand the accents or anything?
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of the most emotional responses. Like, people come up and hug me and after crying.
That's right.
And it was that thing of borders and their experience of borders and probably invading armies and oppressive armies and such like.
How come you two are doing a play about police? We ask ourselves the same question every day. But yeah, that's right. Actually, I'd kind of forgotten about that one, because the other one that always sticks out in my mind was the day we did it for the group of young people in Enniskillen. Like that time when those two young girls came up and spoke to us about both being from police and families. And the other one that sticks in my mind is, do you remember the really elderly lady from Donegal who said that when the two guys shake hands at the border, reminded her of her father and her uncle, and her father and her father-in-law. Do you remember the old woman in that club, and where was that, outside Newry?
Yeah, the Fallons one. Yeah. And the different ones. I mean, there's a pilot that was going back to Enniskillen. I mean, again, I thought the person who was welcoming me there on the stage was the chair of the council, who was a former RUC man based in Rosslea. You know, so like the sort of history with the movement of it, but yeah, the young girls coming up that time was very poignant, and again shows the relevance still of it.
In Dresden, do you remember the guy in the audience in Dresden who said that he announced to the whole audience that he was from Oma, and that he'd never have gone to see this play in Oma. And we were doing it through simultaneous translation for the older members of the audience, and that older woman obviously said through the translator, where did he say he was from? And then we had to explain where Oma was and why the play was significant to him. And then he told them all about growing up in Oma and what it was like to now live in Dresden, and how borders are borders the world over and place are place. I thought that, I always remember her actually, that lady sitting telling us about how we were talking about a border in Ireland, but it was basically theirs as well.
And other ones I remember when we did over, it must have been Tyrone, because there was a young guy there who was the spokesperson for Ógra Sinn Féin, and he was about to go to some conference on policing, and he says, like, I came here the night, like, with a few, I'm gonna hate the guy on it. He says, like, I've totally changed, you know. And, you know, it was great to. Yeah, I suppose I'm proud of that. You know, it's been in the Felons Club up here. It's been in Newry Felons. It's interesting when it was played in the Felons. We had McKeown from the Shankill Women's Centre Betty Carlisle. No, Betty Carlisle.
Oh, Betty
Well, I know well, and
Carlisle,
she'd missed it
yeah.
elsewhere, but she came over till
That's right.
the Fallons were her son, and I was talking to her a couple of days there, and she says, you know, we went downstairs afterwards down to the bar, and on a while later, my son says, Mummy, we're going to have to get out of here. And she says, well, what's up? She says, if I stay any longer, we'll become provies. So the fact that the play could unite people in that way, that probably.
And also actually, like, it is worth saying the number of places when we first started where you and I both agreed it wouldn't be good for you to do post shows with me. And now actually the number of those are less. And I think that's pretty significant actually as well. I think that some of those early post shows were when you weren't with me, and people just find it very difficult to even believe that you could have written something that was so poignant and so heartfelt, and how people find that very difficult. And I think that's as much part of the whole journey as the play itself, you know.
Well, I think there was, on the day that it premiered, there was somebody in the audience who was very angry, but thought the play was great.
Yeah, loved the play, just hated you.
Just hated me. You know. And, yeah, but that's, I mean, as you say, looking back at where it started, and even going through to like the other year, us, you know, the guards having it as for their annual dinner.
Aye, that dinner in Athlone with like 240 moustaches. Yeah, those moments were incredible actually. Just where you watching people hearing their stories for the first time. Yeah, like as I said to you before, I think that the impact on the guards particularly, where all of a sudden they were being heard, I think that was just huge. But yeah.
Yeah. And the impact it had when you took it down till the likes of Cork and Kerry and down there, because people hadn't probably heard their story mentioned before.
No, and how actually there's so many of those guys from Cork were all on the border, stranded with a torch and maybe a bike. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. I know. The boys will be doing it, we'll have to send them on in Zimmer frames at this rate.